The latest on CM Punk is that there is not much new on CM Punk that we did not already know last week. Right now, his return is scheduled for June 17th at the United Center in Chicago, which is likely the debut date for their new Collision show on Saturday nights. This is according to Dave Meltzer. And I am amused by all of the Punk fans who heard this, and they have been tweeting about what a great move this is all week on social media, even though it was Dave that reported it. I thought Dave was supposed to be a joke and not to be taken seriously, but apparently he's only lying and making things up sometimes. When the news is positive, it's true. When it's not, it's a lie. Got it. Anyway, he says the deal was done weeks ago, but there was a snag recently that has been since worked out. Yeah, that snag was called Brandon Cutler. There's no better, safer place for Punk to return if you want the maximum babyface reaction than Chicago. So it's smart, and they're going to sell a lot of tickets if people know he's going to be there, think he's going to be there. The belief is that Warner Brothers Discovery likely wanted Punk back, and his coming back was key in getting a deal done for the Saturday show. Dave pointed out that as a general rule, first-run shows on either TNT or TBS make about $500,000 per hour. And if that's what they're making on this, for a 2-hour show, that's $1 million. Multiply that by 52 weeks a year, and it's not going to air all 52 of those weeks. There's going to be preemptions, especially if it's on TNT. There's going to be a lot of preemptions. But let's say 50 weeks, right? Even if they, on those preempted weeks, they bounce around to a different time slot. Let's say 50 weeks, right? For the sake of argument, that's a $50 million deal right there for AEW, which would be game-changing money for them. And that doesn't include Dynamite and Rampage or whatever they make on those shows. And who's to say that they don't get more than what most shows get as a general rule? It might be $500,000 as a general rule, but maybe they'll get more money. So those are the big pros to such a deal like this and bringing Punk back. Yes, he is a big name, and they're getting a big name back. He would instantly be their top babyface. And the money from the new show. Those are the big pluses. But then I see this news that not only has Punk not apologized to the young, and whatever your opinion is on whether they should apologize or shouldn't, apparently he's willing to apologize. If you believe these reports, Punk wants to apologize, but he has been told not to. I presume by his lawyers, who don't want him to have any contact with the Young Bucks whatsoever. And this rumored meeting with Punk and Chris Jericho that I talked about last week, that still has not taken place. It would include Punk, Jericho, Tony Khan, and FTR. I guess playing mediator because there's no reason for FTR to be involved in it. They've sort of inserted themselves into this. It has nothing to do with them, but I guess they would be there as a calming influence, I guess. I don't know. But that meeting still has not taken place. As of this week, there still has not been any resolution whatsoever to any of the lingering issues. And this supposed brand split for the Saturday show, which would be the Punk show, may not be as soft as originally reported. It may be a harder roster split than we were led to believe. This is a recipe for disaster. And Tony Khan has to know that, but he's bringing Punk back anyway because of the money involved. Well, it'll be his $50 million disaster. But this is a recipe for disaster. To already have plans to bring this man back, when these roster issues have still not been resolved, when Punk has people in his ear telling him not to even attempt to reach out to the Bucks to talk things out, is completely asinine. And all it's going to do is create even more problems. I don't know why this hasn't been already, addressed previously. It's been over 7 months. 7 months. If the deal is to bring back Punk soon, and it was finalized, let's say apparently it was finalized weeks ago, how have they not all been summoned into a room by now to talk about this? I understand the Bucks not wanting to work with him. But as EVPs in the company, if this is the decision that Tony Khan has made and it's what the network wants, then they have a responsibility as executives to do what is in the best interest of the company, not themselves. They don't have to work a match with him if they don't want to, but they have to at least come to the table. It would be to at least hear what the man has to say and make sure they can all coexist under one roof. Even if they're on different shows, it's still one roof. or make sure that there's no gossiping behind people's backs. Right? And then there's the old expression, believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. We're talking about people with massive egos who may have only, their own agendas here. It could be Punk's friends trying to make him out to be the magnanimous one here and make the Bucks look bad, which may explain where the Brandon Cutler tweet came from. I mean, yeah, it's possible he tweeted that on his own because he's an idiot. Or maybe he didn't tweet it on his own so much as he tweeted it on behalf of his buddies. I mean, that's a lot of maybes. These are the only reports that we have to go on right now. That doesn't mean everything Meltzer or anybody else is reporting is 100% gospel. It's not the 100% gospel truth on this entire situation. All we can do is work with the information being reported. And there isn't much more than this to go on right now. What I know is that it's now April. Why are they still dragging their feet on this? Wade Keller on his Torch hotline said there are people in the company who also don't want Punk back, other than the parties that you would think. That the passion against him returning is, quote, unwavering. And some of those names who don't want Punk back would surprise us if we knew who they were. So it's more than just the parties involved who were cold on the idea of CM Punk coming back to AEW. Carving up the roster and segregating the pro-Punk camp on one show and the elite-friendly camp on the other is a terrible idea. But if Tony Khan has made the commitment to Warner for the new show to bring back Punk, there's not much he can do other than try to get these people in a room to call a truce. What he is going to end up with is a civil war. Get the uniforms ready. What was it? The Union soldiers wore blue and the Confederate side wore gray, I think it was. I don't know who's going to end up where. Punk against Kenny Omega would be a money match. That should be done if Punk does come back. But because of this, it may not happen. So who should CM Punk work with? Chris Jericho is probably going to be the first in line. Another match with MJF at some point should happen. Punk never got to work another program with Bryan Danielson like I know he wanted to the first time. I'd love to see Punk and Bryan Danielson. Punk and Samoa Joe would be a natural also, but Joe is exclusively Ring of Honor for the time being, so that's less likely. Punk against Malachi Black, or you do Punk and FTR against the House of Black. Punk is friends with Brody King. I'm sure they would all be happy to work together. Punk against Jay White, who just signed with the company, right? You want to put some fire behind Jay White. You put him in a program with CM Punk at some point down the road. CM Punk against Ricky Starks or Swerve Strickland. I'd like to see him help elevate those two that much more. So, I mean, there's plenty of people other than the elite that Punk could do business with. Hangman Page is not going to be one of those people. We know which camp he's friendly with. He's said to be in discussions with AEW right now about signing a new deal. It's actually very interesting because all of the elite members, Omega and the Bucks, are also said to be in negotiations with AEW right now on possible new deals. So this Punk stuff going on, if the Bucks don't want to meet with him and there's all this drama, if they feel like they're being pressured into doing something they don't want to do, it all happens to be coming at a time when they're all talking about new contracts with Tony Khan. How is that going to factor into these discussions, right? Apparently Hangman Page now, you could add him to the list, right? He's talking about a possible new deal also. He took to Instagram this week. He hasn't had much to say about any of this stuff publicly, which probably makes him the smartest one of them all. He's trying to keep his nose out of this, but he did take to Instagram to clarify his thoughts on taking advice from other veterans. What happened was last summer he was at GalaxyCon taking fan questions, and he was asked about who he takes advice from on the roster because they have so many legends working in AEW, right? Sting and Arn Anderson and Dean Malenko and Billy Gunn, among others. And he said that he's stubborn, he doesn't take advice, he listens to people when they say things, but he doesn't listen very hard. He said he was part of the movement that helped create AEW. He's a world champion or a former world champion. And he wasn't sure that he needed their advice. He said there's something to be said for trial and error and doing it on your own. And those comments rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, including CM Punk, as evidence from the media scrum. He brought that up. So he decided now would be a good time, 8 months later, to clarify those comments. He said, "The reports that I don't take advice have been greatly exaggerated, perhaps by nobody more so than me. Advice and feedback, particularly from those who have come before, have always been and always will be welcomed and appreciated. My self-deprecating and dry insistence otherwise just comes from a place of being more personally interested in wrestling as an art than a sport. It would have been hollow for Picasso to try to paint a Mona Lisa. I kind of thought I would have been asked about this by now and I could have clarified. I just wouldn't want any of the older generation, especially those who work with us, I want them to know that, what is he saying here? Is vital and unknown to the fans. I wouldn't want them to feel that their wisdom is dismissed. Okay, yeah, I don't know what he wrote there. Anyway, that's his message. This was a big story for weeks at the time. That would have been a great statement to put out back then. The fact that he waited this long because he thought somebody would ask him about it by now, and they didn't, is stupid. If he feels that he was taken out of context, and potentially the legends who work in the company and the veterans could be offended by his words being taken out of context, he should have put that out back then. I wouldn't want to walk around thinking that these legends don't think I value their advice if I really do. So I would not have waited 8 months to clarify that, but it was nice of him to do so.